So I actually have done intrapreneurship at Microsoft 2 times now, actually several times, but the two ones that really stuck. The first is that I discovered in the world of virtualization, we had a product called Hyper-V, which was Microsoft's first hypervisor, and we were bundling it with Windows Server at the time. And while this product was being introduced, VMware was certainly taking off and becoming a category lead in the virtualization space. And we wanted to get after that product. I was in the OEM division. I was running the server sales, and my business at the time was $850 million. But I realized what customers really need in the SMB space that I sold to wasn't a hypervisor, because that was just one piece of the pie. What they're really doing was building private clouds. We didn't know at the time that that was called private clouds, but that's what they wanted. And when I got to getting a pizza box server, 1U or 2U server, and deploying Windows Server, and then configuring it for Hyper-V, and then installing System Center and being able to manage that, I realized that that endeavor, I'm not kidding, was a day and a half to 2 days, just to deploy the software to be able to get to a point where you actually create your first VM. And so I thought at the time, there has to be a better way, and there was. We created a SKU that was a combined Windows Server and System Center SKU, and we said, hypothetically, this could probably be a pre-integrated SKU that could sell to SMBs, pre-installed on boxes, so that when it gets to their location, a partner could rack, stack, plug the power, plug the network, and start creating VMs. What ended up happening is I raised $1.3 million inside Microsoft, and we actually built a working prototype of this as a mini data center. And today it sits out behind our executive briefing center. There's a big badge that says Microsoft Private Cloud on it. But it's a 4-rack self-contained data center that had the capacity at the time to run 4,000 VMs, all on free air cooling, with a PUE of 1.05. And if you're in the data center world, PUE is really the measure of the efficiency of power to computing. And we had 0.05, whereas the industry norm was close to 2. And then 6 months later, I'm in the middle of a desert in Abu Dhabi, because our very first customer, the Bank of Abu Dhabi, actually took this concept and built a 1.46 megawatt data center on this design principle. That product eventually got graduated into a real product at Microsoft called the Microsoft Cloud Platform Solution, or CPS, and is now since recently graduated into what is the Azure Stack. And the reason for that is we are more and more increasingly getting away from our on-prem products of Windows Server, System Center, Exchange, SharePoint, and moving to our cloud services. And Azure fits that bill for large-scale enterprise computing. So that was my first intrapreneurship project. It was a 2-year endeavor. I was managing this $850 million business while doing this side hustle. And if that side hustle were to implode, it would impact my core job. So I was truly burning the midnight oil. But I had such a conviction that this was the right way to sell to customers that could really set Microsoft apart. And what we in the founding team eventually proved out is that that hybrid cloud wasn't just words on a PowerPoint slide. It was truly something that the enterprise customers wanted. We validated that, and that was exciting. And there was a similar effort that was happening at Microsoft at the time, if you followed it, called the Azure Pods. And the Azure Pods was an 800 server deployment of Azure. Eventually, only went to 4 or 5 customers, and it didn't do well. And we were doing half-rack installations. So we were able to demonstrate that we were able to get into a hybrid cloud scenario and really create value that eventually would speak to Azure longer term. And the Azure Stack is one example of that. A recent project that my team and I have been working on for the last 2 years is called our Startup Predictor. And the short of that is we partner with Bing Predicts because they have access to a ton of very, very informative data around traffic patterns and web information, as well as the ability to track certain identifiers that we've seen as identifiers for startup success. What we wanted to do with the Startup Predictor was to use data to select startups, identify early stage startups that had key indicators of success. Serial founders, their ability to raise money, who's backing them from an investor perspective, web traffic, and a bunch of other variables. With 30 to 45,000 active startups in any given year and a small team, it's very hard to be able to actually get to these early stage startups and try to provide value back to them. So we started the Startup Predictor endeavor, and 2 years later, we're on path to have that patented, and we're actually in a position to start selling to some of our enterprise customers. So intrapreneurship is actually, it's an amazing journey. It's not easy because oftentimes you have your day job plus you're doing this on the side. And with companies as large as Microsoft, there's obviously some politics involved as well, just normal corporate politics that come through. But that was probably the funnest that and this job are the funnest experiences that I've had in my 13-year career at Microsoft. Being able to build stuff, but also be with companies that are building the future of innovation in the startup world has been the most exciting journeys that I've been on.